If your life has felt harder lately, especially while you're genuinely trying to do right, praying more consistently, trying to be more honest, more patient, more generous than before, Islam has a specific word for exactly what might be happening underneath all of that, and it's not punishment, even though it can feel exactly like punishment in the moment it's happening. It's called Bala, and according to the Quran, it might actually be evidence you're closer to Allah, not further from Him, even when everything about the situation feels like the opposite is true. There's a specific hadith about something as small and forgettable as a single thorn that completely changes how this concept actually works in practice, not just as an abstract theological idea. I'll get to that exact hadith in a minute, word for word. We just covered Ayyub, who lost his wealth, his health, and his family for 18 full years and never once turned away from Allah, no matter how long the silence and the suffering stretched on without any visible end. According to a hadith from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the reason a trial like that becomes so severe isn't random or arbitrary at all, and it isn't a sign that something has gone wrong. It follows a specific, clearly described pattern about exactly who gets tested the hardest in this life, and precisely why that particular pattern exists at all. The Prophet was asked directly by his own companions who among people is tested most severely during their lifetime. His answer was specific and given in a clear, deliberate order. The prophets first, since their faith was the strongest of anyone who ever lived, then those closest to them in righteousness and sincerity, then the next closest group after that, and so on further down the line, with each person tested according to the actual strength of their faith rather than at random or by simple bad luck. He said a person is tested in direct proportion to their religion. If their faith is firm, well-established, and deeply rooted, the trial intensifies to match that strength. If their faith is weaker, newer, or still developing, the trial lightens accordingly to what that person can actually bear without breaking entirely. This single answer flips an assumption most people quietly carry around for years without ever really examining it closely or questioning where it came from. Here's the detail I promised you earlier. According to an authentic hadith, the Prophet said that not even a thorn pricks a believer, nor any fatigue, illness, sadness, grief, or harm touches them in any way, not even a small, passing anxiety that quietly troubles them during an otherwise ordinary day, except that Allah expiates some measure of their sins because of it. Not just major hardship, not just the big dramatic losses people usually associate with real, meaningful trials worth mentioning to anyone. A thorn, the smallest, most forgettable physical irritation someone could possibly experience on any given day, something most people wouldn't even remember by evening, is described as carrying this exact same function, working quietly underneath the surface of a completely unremarkable moment nobody else would ever notice or ask about. This reframes suffering almost completely once you actually sit with what it's genuinely suggesting rather than skimming past it the way most people do the first time they hear it. It's not described anywhere in this framework as proof of distance from Allah or as a sign of being forgotten, overlooked, or punished unfairly for something unclear or unknown to the person experiencing it. It's described instead as an active, ongoing process, something considerably closer to purification than penalty, working continuously and quietly in the background of an entirely ordinary life, often through things far too minor to even mention out loud to another person, let alone complain about publicly or post about anywhere. This changes what a genuinely difficult season of life might actually mean for someone living through it right now, today. The version of you dealing with real hardship at this exact moment isn't necessarily further away from where you want to be spiritually, no matter how distant or abandoned that might feel on certain mornings when nothing seems to be improving. According to this entire framework, that person might actually be in the middle of something closer to a proportional response to genuine, tested faith, rather than any kind of evidence that their faith has somehow failed, gone completely unnoticed, or stopped mattering to Allah entirely. This isn't a reason to stop seeking real help for real problems, though, and that distinction matters a great deal here, more than it might first seem. Illness still needs actual medical treatment, not just quiet acceptance. Injustice still needs to be addressed directly, through whatever legitimate means are available, rather than quietly endured forever out of some misplaced sense of piety. Pain is never something Islam asks anyone to simply accept in complete silence without ever trying to improve their own situation where that's genuinely possible for them to do. Ayyub himself, after everything he endured for 18 years, eventually cried out honestly and directly for relief, and that cry was answered immediately and completely without delay. Bala explains the deeper meaning and purpose underneath suffering when it arrives in someone's life. It was never meant to explain away a person's ongoing responsibility to actually seek help and relief when real, legitimate help is genuinely available to them right now. So if today felt heavier than it reasonably should have, heavier than you can fully explain to the people around you, here's the direct reframe worth carrying with you afterward, long after this video ends. According to this entire framework we've just covered together, that exact weight might be quietly doing something you genuinely can't see or measure right now, in this exact moment. The same way it worked silently for Ayyub across 18 full years before anything visibly changed for him at all, before there was any sign the wait would ever end. Next, we're going somewhere that connects directly to everything covered in this series so far. Qisas, the justice system Islam says overrides every human court that has ever existed, even in situations where human law confidently and officially declares someone completely innocent. Subscribe so you don't miss it.